Welcome to Tom's True Crime. Today we take you to Cary, North Carolina. Wednesday, February 22nd, 2006, at around 3:05 in the morning, patrol officers were in the area of Old Apex Road and observed what they thought was a brush fire. So one officer went to investigate it. When the officer first came upon the fire, he got out of his car and was able to see and thought that it was a mannequin that was on fire. They used their fire extinguishers to put out the fire. To their horror, it was not a mannequin. It was a human body. Police didn't know who it was. They had a dead body in suspicious circumstances. When County Detective Perry Hualahan first got there, he was handling the crime scene of where the body is. There was some clothing that had been burnt off. There were some trash bags that were partially burnt and some bedding. It was like something that was used to help carry the body. Detective Hualahan then directs several detectives to go knock on all the doors in the area. One resident reports something odd. One of the neighbors, he had put his trash out the night before. As he came out this morning, he saw the helicopters and the police activity and realized there was a bag of trash with his other bags of trash that he had not placed there. Detectives open the bag and see it has belongings in it, a work coat belonging to a UPS employee and some identification. Police were very fortunate, and it was a lucky break in this case. That trash bag could have been taken away, and they would have never had that evidence. In that trash bag was identification that belonged to Harry Coster. Harry Coster was born on October 18, 1955. He grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. He has a close relationship with his siblings. As a young boy, Harry Coster excelled academically but struggled socially. Despite being very intelligent, Harry was often more of a mama's boy and faced frequent bullying because he wouldn't fight back. As he grew older and got his own car, Harry became rarely home. He worked hard, holding down 2 jobs and never missing a day at work. His dedication to earning money allowed him to enjoy nice things, but his social difficulties persisted. Harry's luck in love was unfortunately poor. His family worried about him, as he was often alone. The girls he dated frequently took advantage of his kindness, exploiting his tendency to fall in love easily and give them whatever they wanted. Once he found somebody, he stuck with them. Then he gave them anything they wanted. Whenever he has his heart broken, he would call his family members for solace. He would be so sad. All Harry wanted was somebody to love him. In October 2005, when Harry was 50 years old, he found what he was looking for when a neighbor introduced him to Judy Eggert. Judy grew up in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. She was popular. She was a cheerleader. She and her friends liked to hang out on the weekends. After high school, Judy enrolled in elementary education classes at the University of North Carolina and worked hard to pay her way through school. She worked a series of jobs, waitress, secretary, office manager, kind of things where she impressed people. People said that she was very bright. She was very good at her job, very charismatic. She could sell ice to an Eskimo. Judy's personal life was not as simple. Judy had a series of relationships, ends up having a total of 6 children. Judy relished her role as a mother, but her relationships never seemed to last. People describe her as looking good on the outside, but internally something is wrong. In 1999, Judy was struggling to make a new beginning for herself and her 2 youngest sons, Chuck and Michael Bylhouwer. They were around 11 years old at that time. That's when she met Jason Dibben. He worked for the Environment Protection Agency. He was good to Judy's sons, Chuck and Michael. He was more of a father than their biological father. Judy and Jason married in 1999. They moved to Garner, North Carolina, and they opened a mini-mart. Judy's 2 children, Michael and Chuck, would work at the store. Things were going pretty well for the family. Sadly, on Christmas Day 2002, the family's picture-perfect life was scorched when fires swept through their home. Michael ran across the street to a friend's house to get them to call 911. No one could get into the house to get Jason out. Judy's husband, Jason Dibben, perished in the fire. Judy said she ran down the steps and went to the living room, and she opened the door. All these flames came out and pushed her back. She called for Jason because she thought even if he couldn't see her, he could hear voice to find his way out. Investigators determined that Jason's fiery death was a tragic accident that began when Jason fell asleep smoking. Apparently, he dropped a cigarette on a flammable couch, and it went up in flames. They were in shock. They have lost everything. Jason Dibben was gone. The house was gone. They had to start over again. As Judy tried to pick up the pieces, secret sins from her past came back to haunt her. Judy had underlying issues with the police, and she was being investigated. Police received a call about an embezzlement at the divinity school, and they said it was about $200,000 that was stolen. Prior to the fire, Judy worked as a bookkeeper at divinity school. Within 1 year, she's laid off from her job at the school. Her house burns down Christmas Day. Early 2003, police found out that the person that they had laid off, Judy Eggert, stole $200,000. Judy Eggert was arrested and charged with embezzlement. Judy was sentenced to 10 years for the embezzlement case. She did a remarkably short stint, 2 years for it. After her release in 2005, Judy was determined to make the best of her second chance in life. She got out of jail because of good behavior, and as soon as she got out of jail, that's when she met Harry Coster. Harry seemed really happy. He liked Judy a lot. He thought he had finally got himself a good woman. She was the love of his life. They were spending time together. Everything was great. 4 months into Judy and Harry's relationship, on February 22, 2006, Wake County, North Carolina police have discovered a burning body. An ID found nearby suggests the victim could be 50-year-old Harry Coster. After completing their initial canvass of the neighborhood where the body was found, investigators begin a close examination of the crime scene. There were some drag marks in that area, so it appeared that he wasn't killed in the blaze there. It appeared that he may have been killed elsewhere and then brought to that location. Investigators were able to observe some shoe impressions near and around the body, and casts were made of those. The Wake County Fire Marshal's office responded, and they had a canine named Lily that helped investigators at the scene of the fire to determine if any accelerants were used to ignite the body on fire. The canine accelerant dog alerted on multiple areas of combustible material placed onto the body. Since an accelerant was used, investigators started sending detectives out to area gas stations to determine if anyone had recently purchased a small amount of gas around the time of the fire. Investigators retrieved a number of videos from those time frames and looked for possible suspects. Before detectives have a chance to review the footage, the medical examiner's office releases the results of the autopsy. One of the main things they collect are fingerprints, and investigators run them through the North Carolina Automated Fingerprint Identification System. They were able to compare those to Harry Coster's, and they match. Also, the chief medical examiner determines that the cause of death was sharp force trauma, which is typically a knife type of wound. The injuries included 2 stab wounds, center mass on his body, that the medical examiner said, in and of themselves, each would have been fatal. He also had a stab wound to his neck, and he had defensive wounds on his hands. Harry Coster had been stabbed and then set on fire, and they were able to prove that because there was no soot in the airway or lungs, so that means he was not burned alive. For investigators, the cause of death is key when trying to identify suspects. The stabbing murder is very close and personal, and burning of the body displays someone that's involved in criminal activity and will show you that they will go to great lengths to try and hide their tracks. Once investigators learn that Harry Coster is the victim of a homicide, they want to learn everything there is to know about him and his life so they can piece together who would have wanted to murder him. Investigators spoke to Harry's family and friends. Harry's family were shocked and totally devastated about Harry's death. Harry does not have a high-risk lifestyle. He wasn't involved in drugs or gangs. Once family members have had a chance to process the shock, detectives question them. Investigators began trying to establish a timeline and figure out who and what Harry Coster is about. Harry led the typical lifestyle. He played the Keno machines sometimes, but he didn't owe anyone any money. He wasn't that type of gambler. He was not involved in any illegal activity that could be associated with his murder. He was an ordinary, decent guy. But the sister of the victim provided information where Harry had some prior issues with a past girlfriend, Maria. Harry and Maria were together for a long time. She had children that moved in with Harry. There were numerous calls to police for Harry's residence in reference to the ex-girlfriend. Law enforcement responded to his residence about a dozen times in the previous couple of years. They include domestic violence. They include theft and also a burglary. Probably 30 to 40 days before his murder, the place had been broken into and some of his baseball cards that he collected had been taken. Harry believed that it was possibly the teenage son or Maria herself. Police wonder if rising tensions with Maria could have led to Harry's murder. But thus far, they haven't found any evidence to support their suspicions. The sister also provided information that he had a new girlfriend named Judy. The family members say that things were a little rocky between Judy and Harry. Judy has had trouble with the law before over financial crimes, nothing violent. Before looking into Harry's relationships, detectives head over to Harry's neighborhood, approximately 10 miles from the crime scene. Investigators go to Harry's address where he lived and began knocking on doors. Neighbors report that they haven't seen Harry Coster for several days, nor the truck he recently purchased. They also tell detectives about the ex-girlfriend, Maria. They described a lot of issues between the two, but she had not been living there for some time, and that Harry had a new girlfriend named Judy. Detectives also speak with Chuck Bylhouwer, Harry's neighbor and Judy's son. Investigators did not tell Chuck that Harry was deceased at that point. They learned that Judy Eggert now resided in an address over in Cary. Chuck did provide information as to how he got in contact with his mother. In an effort to unearth any possible clues, detectives turned to Harry's home. They also had obtained a search warrant for his residence, so they entered the residence. Less than 24 hours after the body of Harry Coster was found burning on a roadside, Wake County investigators searched his home. They searched the house from top to bottom, looking for signs of a struggle or ransacking. If the crime maybe originated at this location, anything that could help them in identifying the suspects in the investigation. They went through room by room, paying particular attention to the kitchen area where knives would be stored and located to see if any of these could be related to his murder. The team finds no obvious murder weapon or other indications Harry was killed there. There was nothing significant in the house of evidentiary value. They didn't notice messages left by his current girlfriend, Judy Eggert. Answering machine timestamps indicate Judy left some of the messages the previous night. The messages that Judy left were basically, "Hey, Harry, where are you? How are you doing? Hey, it's me. Hey, how come you're not calling me? What's going on?" It was an investigative strategy not to reach out to Judy at this point in the investigation. It was more important for them to follow their leads as they were developing. One of the messages on Harry's answering machine was from a nearby auto dealership. They took that information, contacted the dealership, and learned that he had purchased a Jeep Grand Cherokee and that it was in the shop getting worked on. Harry had put his car in the shop and was given a loaner car. Armed with that new information, investigator gave it to detectives who then went back out to the area of the initial crime scene and they searched the area. Just 33 hours into the investigation, authorities spot the truck. Harry's loaner vehicle was found about a block away from where his burning body was discovered. The location of that vehicle was indicative that was possibly used in the crime. Investigators went ahead and secured it, had it towed to their evidence collection unit. Continuing to run down their leads, investigators talked to Harry's coworkers. Coworkers tell detectives they think Harry was a prime target for robbery. Harry loved playing Keno, and he would go around flaunting the money. He had just won $1,000 and had been showing it to everybody at work. He won the playing Keno the day before he was murdered. Investigators had to look at this as being a possible street robbery gone bad. Coworkers also suggest another, more personal possibility. Harry had told a coworker that he had discovered that Judy had made some purchases on his credit card. He believed Judy used his credit cards to buy over $9,000 worth of furniture. He was going to confront her, and that if she didn't pay him back, he was going to go to the police. Harry gave her a deadline of February 22nd to rectify the situation. And then on the morning of February 22nd at 3:05 a.m., his body is found. Detectives now believe Judy has a motive to want Harry out of the picture. As the investigation progresses, they were able to eliminate Maria as a possible suspect. Investigators were able to develop enough probable cause to get a search warrant for Judy Eggert's residence. Less than 48 hours after Harry's body was found, police execute the warrant. They knock on the door, get no response. They wait a minute, still no response. They then break out a window to enter the residence. No one's home. As soon as police entered the residence, they were hit by an overwhelming smell of bleach. Inside the residence was new furniture, which is consistent with the information investigators had developed from coworkers that she had bought $9,000 worth of furniture using Harry's credit cards. They began looking around the residence, and they determined that there is discolored carpet. It was wet and reeked of bleach. When the police picked the carpet up and looked underneath, they were able to see bloodstains. As the processing continues, a vehicle pulls up in front of the house. Michael Bylhouwer got out of the car and was starting to walk to the house. When Michael got within about 20 feet of the front door, he was told he can't go in the house. It's a crime scene. Michael Bylhouwer, who is Judy Eggert's son, arrives on scene, at which time detectives stop doing his search inside the residence. Detective Aubin goes out and speaks to Michael. Detective Aubin asked Michael if he knew who lived there, and he said his mom. Michael asked, "Why? What's going on?" Michael is worried about police doing a search warrant at the residence. Detective Aubin advised Michael that they were conducting an investigation, and Detective Aubin asked where his mother was. Michael called Judy and found out that she was on her way home. Around 9 p.m., Judy Eggert arrives home. When Detective Aubin first meets Judy out at the parking area of her residence, she said, "What is this about?" And Aubin told her, "It's about Harry, and we need to talk to you about him." Detective Aubin informed her that it was Harry's body that was found. He asked her if she would be willing to go to their criminal investigation division to talk to them, at which time she agrees. Detective Aubin asks Judy's son, Michael, to go to the station as well. Investigators do not tell them about the apparent blood found in the home. Judy and Michael are brought to the criminal investigation division. They're separated and put in separate interview rooms where detectives go in and are talking to each of them separately. It was the first time Michael had been in an interrogation room, and it happens to be on a murder charge. Michael's only thought about it was, how are they going to get out of this situation? After detectives find the body of Harry Coster, Wake County Police interview Michael Bylhouwer, the son of Harry's girlfriend, Judy Eggert. They came at Michael. "Do you know Harry Coster? Do you know who killed him?" Michael said, "I don't know anything. I wasn't there. You're looking in the wrong place. Why don't you go talk to my mother? That's her boyfriend. I've been with my girlfriend the whole time." Another detective conducts a simultaneous interview with Judy, asking her about Tuesday, February 21st, the day before Harry's body was found. She said that Harry had come over to her residence that night on Tuesday, and they had watched a movie together, and then they went to bed. Judy reported that the alarm was set for 2:50 a.m., so that Harry could get up for work. She said he got up and she heard him leave, and that was the last time she had seen him. Harry's burning body was found 15 minutes later, at 3:05 a.m. She starts talking about leaving Harry phone messages because she hadn't seen or heard from him, and she was worried about him and was wondering why he wasn't returning her phone calls. In the other room, the interview with Michael continues. As detectives are interviewing Michael, something just doesn't seem right. So they start talking to him more and inform him that there's an apparent crime scene. He initially said that he didn't know what had happened. He then told the police a story about how he had been at the house. Michael begins to lay out the fact that Harry was at the residence, and he was also there on Tuesday, February 21st. He witnessed his mother and Harry get into a violent fight, and that she called for his older brother, Chuck. Michael said that Chuck came in and beat Harry up and shot him with a gun. That doesn't match up with the cause of death. He was stabbed, not shot. Detectives know that Michael is lying, but he's telling them some truth. He's telling them that Harry was killed inside their residence. Authorities choose to release Michael until they can gather more information about the case. Michael was never under arrest. He was always free to go, but investigators said he couldn't go back to the house because it was a crime scene. Investigators decide to press Judy with what they know. The detectives that are interviewing Judy confront her with the fact that there's a crime scene in her residence. Judy Eggert says she doesn't know what happened in her house and doesn't know how this occurred. She puts her hands right up to her face and begins to cry. When Judy raised her hands, detectives immediately noticed some small cuts and nicks to her hands. Her story was that she had been lifting some boxes while she was at work and had cut her hand. When detectives press her about the injuries, Judy Eggert decides she has had enough. She doesn't want to talk anymore, and shortly thereafter, the interview is ended. Like Michael, Judy is allowed to go, although neither can return to Judy's home, which is still secured as a potential crime scene. After the interviews, detectives dig further into Judy's background. They wanted to gather as much information as they could in the investigation. They were looking at her history, and that's when things start to really evolve. The first time Judy came into law enforcement attention was in early January 2003. That was the embezzlement of $200,000. They also discovered that her husband at the time died, just days before, on Christmas Day 2002 in a fire. Wake County detectives learned that in 2003, 3 years before Harry Coster's murder. At that time when police contacted Judy about the embezzlement case, she was very cooperative and was willing to schedule an interview. After a few hours, Judy's lawyer called police and said that Judy self-exited. Police respond to a parking lot near a beach, and there's a vehicle with its lights running, and then there's this note. Judy left a self-exit note and that Judy had gone out into the water and allegedly self-exited. Obviously, the whole thing was a sham. At that time, police put out a warrant for Judy's arrest. 3 months after her fake self-exit, Judy's name popped up again when she tried to get public assistance in Virginia. She turns up at a battered woman's shelter in Norfolk, Virginia. Police drove to Norfolk, Virginia with arrest warrants for her. They went to her room and placed her under arrest, and she ultimately gets convicted for the embezzlement. 3 months after being released on parole, she met Harry Koster. 4 months after that, Harry was dead, his body burned, just like Judy's husband, Jason Dibben. Her first husband was killed in a fire, and now her boyfriend, years later, is also doused and set ablaze. It definitely adds to suspicions that maybe Jason Dibben was murdered. Police did speak with some of the investigators from the Jason Dibben case. They had reopened that case and that they were taking another look at that. Detectives are convinced Judy Eggert was involved in Harry's death. They just have to uncover the evidence to prove it. 3 days after Harry's murder, the crime lab presents their findings. The laboratory analysis determined that the accelerant used to ignite Harry's body was gasoline. Investigators turned their focus to the previously collected security video obtained from nearby gas stations on the morning of Harry's murder. Judy Eggert was on videotape getting about $5 worth of gas at a gas station right around the corner from where Harry's body was found burning about 15 minutes after she purchased the gas. These videos prove Judy wasn't home asleep, as she claimed. Police have enough to charge Judy with accessory after the fact for the murder of Harry. Police didn't know her full involvement at the time. They know that she's involved. They don't know who did the stabbing. Was it her or one of her 2 sons? On the night of February 25, 2006, detectives go to arrest Judy Eggert as an accessory to the brutal murder of her boyfriend, Harry Koster. She was handcuffed and taken to the Criminal Investigation Division. Once she got there, she said nothing. With Judy refusing to talk, authorities turned to her 19-year-old son, Chuck Bylhouwer. They spoke to him about his mother and about being involved in Harry's death. Chuck became very emotional and said, "No, I don't think she did it, but if she did, then she also killed Jason Dibben." In talking to Chuck, he maintained that he was not involved in this incident at all. With no hard evidence against him, authorities released Chuck. By this time, investigators obtained consent to search Harry Koster's loaner vehicle, which was found near the crime scene. There was a knife found in Harry Koster's truck. Investigators returned to Judy's home, looking for connection between Judy and the knife. A second search warrant was executed on Judy Eggert's residence, and in her residence, knives that were of the same brand were found, so that linked the murder weapon to Judy's residence. While executing the search at Judy's home, detectives get an unexpected visitor yet again. Just like in the first search warrant, Michael comes to the residence. He was asked if he would come down to CID for another interview, in which he did. He now is denying any involvement and not having any information in regards to the murder of Harry. Michael said he gave different accounts of what happened because he was scared. He said he implicated his brother because his mother told him to. She had said to Michael, "I'm not going back to jail." Authorities questioned several of Michael's friends, who say 17-year-old Michael had confessed to them that he was involved in covering up Harry's murder. The friends agreed to testify. Police, based on all that information, obtain an arrest warrant for Michael. Police charge him. Michael woke up to the police wanting to arrest him for first-degree murder. He was shocked. He couldn't believe it was happening. Shortly thereafter, Chuck Bylhouwer is also indicted for the murder of Harry Koster. Police had some cell phone movement the night of the murder that linked him going from his address down to the area of where Harry's body was located and burned. They also had shoe impressions, which were consistent with shoes that police took out of Chuck's residence that link him to within feet of Harry's burned body. Chuck confesses to his part in the crime. Chuck told the authorities that he was called to help his mom. When he showed up, Harry was already dead, and she needed help getting rid of the body. Chuck Bylhouwer pleads guilty to the reduced charge of accessory after the fact to second-degree murder. He got sentenced to 5 years. Michael Bylhouwer also pleads guilty to the charge of accessory after the fact. Due to his age, he ended up receiving a suspended sentence in regards to his involvement. Preparing for trial, prosecutors had a murder charge against Judy Eggert. The state's theory was that she had been stealing from Harry Koster from the start of their relationship. It's the state's belief that an ultimatum was issued to Judy Eggert. If she didn't pay him back, he was going to go to the police. She knew the jig was up, and her way of getting out of this was taking his life. Prosecutors believe that in the early morning hours of February 22, 2006, Judy used a kitchen knife to stab Harry in her apartment, his blood seeping into her carpet. She did contact her sons and have them come and help dispose of the body. Prosecutors believe Judy then went home and used bleach to try to get rid of the blood evidence. On April 17, 2008, to avoid a trial, Judy Eggert enters an Alford plea to charges of felony theft and second-degree murder. An Alford plea is when a person says they're not going to plead guilty, but they will accept the finding of guilty by saying that there's enough evidence to convict them. She ended up being sentenced to 30 years for her role in the murder of Harry. This was a mother who brought her sons into her crime, so the devious nature of a woman who would do that to her children is extraordinary. Judy Eggert is a career criminal, and she's like a tornado. When she comes into a town, she leaves a path of destruction and death. Wherever she goes, fire goes. Harry Coster's family is certain she will do it again. She can't help it. For the family of Harry Coster, putting the past behind them remains difficult. Harry told his family that one day he will retire and move closer to them so they can spend time together. Now they will never see him again. That dream is dead. Harry is remembered as a good person. All he ever wanted was love and a family and to be happy. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tom's True Crime. If you are interested in more in-depth investigations into the most perplexing crimes, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What are your thoughts about this case? Please share them with us in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.